Second.
You already seconded?
No, I didn't. We haven't gotten that far.
So we need a first. I guess you're the first. Renee, would you mind seconding?
Second. I
All
thought it was-
right, all in favor?
Aye.
Would everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which we stand, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just what I always wanted.
Okay, does anybody have any conflicts of interest or disclosures that they would like to make? I do not. Okay. Our first item is a non-municipal use permit for the annual Hanukkah celebration from the Chabad Lubavitch of Pittsburgh.
It looked good to me.
Looks like the same as every year, so
They're not showing up.
Exact same application, just dates are changed.
You gotta wait 45 days.
we'll waive the 45-degree waiting period. Would someone like to make a motion?
Go for it, Renee.
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve the non-municipal use permit for 2019 for Chabad Lubavitch of Pittsburgh, waiving the 45-degree wait period. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next item we have is an updating on the traffic calming on Maple Street.
So we,
Is anybody from Maple Street here?
No.
Okay. Sorry.
so since our last meeting, there have been no further actions because we were waiting to vote on the next item on the agenda, which is the area-wide plan. Because SRF is gonna be taking a bigger traffic calming look, so that we're not doing it piecemeal to make sure what we're doing in one spot won't affect another, and that we're doing it all in concert. And it was also what the emergency services asked Frank and the mayor to put together. So they didn't wanna necessarily approve things in little tiny pieces, they wanted an area-wide look. So-
Right. And we all agreed that
Yeah.
it was a sensible strategy.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
So that's where we are. We also have on the agenda tonight the,
Proposal.
well, the proposal for that, and then also looking at, if we wanna consider a crossing guard, because that's one of the things that the Maple Street neighbors had asked about as well.
Is anybody communicating with them? I touch
have-
base with them maybe once a month.
I have been emailing them
Yeah.
and responding to emails I've received.
Same here.
Okay.
So, and everything, they know, that's,
That's the message we've given them.
that's the message we've given them, because we haven't met, when they last, reached out to us, we had just had our other meeting, and it was before this one, so nothing has changed since we last reached out to them.
Okay.
Okay, so, one item at a time. Let's deal with the proposal
Okay.
first. Are there any discussion items on that? We did look at it last time and we agreed to give everybody time to read through it.
My big question on it was, do we absolutely need it? So it's around $6,000, right? Something like that, maybe 6,200. And my question is, do we absolutely need to do this with a 25+ year mayor on here, and you, Renee, who have a lot of expertise in this area? Is this money we need to spend, or could we just make these decisions without spending the money?
I think it's worthwhile because in talking to Dave, there's so many issues that I'm not an expert on, like the actual geometry. He went out and he looked at the intersection of Maple and South to determine, if a crosswalk would work there or if there were visibility issues. And he has access to data and official New York State DOT policies that I'm not qualified to comment on. And I think the other thing is our traffic calming policy actually calls for this before we enact anything. It also protects us so that the solutions that we're implementing are in full conformance with New York State highway and traffic law. I don't know, Renee, what do you feel?
Well, so the reason this was needed, and correct me if I'm misunderstanding, but this isn't included as part of our regular, fee with them, right? Our regular retainer.
Correct,
So this is
correct.
above and beyond. The emergency services, the response team, however, whatever we're calling that team, asked for this when Frank and, Bob met with them. And this is beyond the scope. I can say, yes, it would be great to have, to narrow the lanes here or to get rid of this lane, but we need a traffic engineer to get out there and give us the specifications for it. And part of this is also working with the, trying to advocate for the things that we want to happen around the, State Street Bridge, which is, the DOT needs some feedback now. So Bob can speak more to why we need the big area-wide plan. I didn't.
No, that part I get, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense. I know it's not a budgeted item, but I think the issues are a high priority because we know that the state is moving ahead with their plans and we want to have an effective opportunity to comment and improve the pedestrian enhancements that they make. I think also it also demonstrates good faith to the emergency services group, and we've worked hard to develop a constructive dialogue with them, and I think it's already paid dividends because their attitude has really changed significantly, I think, to be able to support some of what we do as long as it's in a way that doesn't impede emergency response.
So Renee, they asked for, the emergency services people asked for this the last time we talked to them?
I didn't meet with him, Bob and Frank did. I
Oh.
wasn't in that meeting.
They specifically asked for a village-wide plan, so they could, what they were concerned about is that we sort of piecemeal improvements without fully considering what the implications would be for emergency response. And they want more of a coordinated approach, really, which makes sense in any planning. It's normally what you try to do, is look at the big picture to ensure that the sequential improvements that you make work harmoniously together and don't cause conflict. So I think it is, it will pay dividends in the end, and hopefully will help us to avoid wasting money on things that don't work by taking a broader look at the beginning.
Yeah. I don't know, I've always really liked the idea of try it for a little while. This is a stop sign. This is not a dramatic redesign of the village. This is a stop sign to really solve a safety problem for a bunch of our residents.
Yeah, if you recall, I was for the stop sign. I think I have enough data to know that we can put the stop signs there, and I don't think it's gonna, Frank disagreed, and there was a little more discussion. I don't want to throw Frank under the bus. But we have enough data to me, and enough data from the traffic engineer to show that we could put a stop sign there, but this is part of, the freeway stop there is part of, a bigger package that we're trying to get approved by the
Yeah.
emergency services, and they don't wanna approve and agree to that if they don't know how it's gonna impact everything else. So we're in a little, we agreed to this, we agreed not to do it piecemeal, so that they could see how it would affect everything, and I don't know, I wanna get the darn stop signs in. So this is not just about those, the
And
stop
I
signs at
think
Maple and
there's,
South. It's about what we wanna do with Sutherland, it's about South Street as a whole. We've got a big issue at the corner of South and Main Street. There was another woman today who reported that she was hit and she called
Oh, my word.
on her elbow. I don't know if I don't know who it was, but, yeah.
I think the other thing I'd like to add to the discussion is that in implementing the measures that we put in place so far, each time we've made an effort to reach out with the respective neighborhoods so that the neighbors understand what we're doing, why we're doing, and if they have concerns, we can address them or take their comments and modify what we're proposing. I think it'll be helpful because there's many elements, the stop sign at the Sutherland High School driveway, the potential of improvements.
Right, yeah,
at
but we're
Sutherland
really
Road.
just talking about Maple.
No,
Maple's
this-
the thing.
no, this
we're
is-
not, actually.
Yeah, no, I understand, but I think I've already made the point. We've been around and around on this, so if you guys think we need to do the full study, I'm just trying to sneak one through for
I would love to
them.
sneak that one through. It
Yeah.
doesn't sound like, we want to be, a good partner with our emergency services team, and that's what we've agreed to do. They don't want to sit down and agree to things in piecemeal. I don't know how else to do this.
Yeah.
And,
Okay,
Okay,
fine, thanks.
I would make a motion to,
Bob,
yes.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
Are we happy with the hourly rate, because they default to an hourly rate if they get interrupted? I mean, do we know what the hourly rate
I
is?
think we could make a, not to exceed.
I just don't know what it is.
Fixed
Do you know what the hourly rate is for that?
It's a fixed bid. The contract's.
No, but if it defaults in paragraph E2 to hourly rate.
I think I would, probably the hourly rate is gonna be somewhere around $90 to $110 an hour, that's standard in the industry. But we might wanna add a line that would say, subject to approval from the village board,
Yeah.
so they don't just go off and charge us extra.
Okay, that's fine.
Justin had a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, is any of this part of the highway improvements being done by DOT? Part of this, or is this just the traffic calming thing?
These are improvements that would all be on village streets. The improvements that so far that DOT has discussed as part of the state route repaving project include improvements at Shane Place and North Main Street, potential improvements at Shane Place and State Street, the library crosswalk on State Street, and improvements at the Church Street. And there is a public information meeting about all of this to be held here, I believe. Is it here? Or
No, it's at the
No, it's the
library.
library. Thank you. Between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m., I believe that's next
17th.
Tuesday, right? Yeah.
Just the comment I was trying to get at is, I don't know the details of that, but I suspect they may need to apply to the planning board for LWRP, because I don't think, if they're changing the highway, it's no longer a type 2 action in seeker become. And so we could get involved in environmental reviews, and we may have the opportunity to hire a consultant and bill it back to them.
I don't know that, I believe.
I don't know all the legalese behind that, but
My
LWRP is binding on
understanding-
state agencies.
Yes, the LWRP is binding on state agencies. I'm not sure how the process works, but that would be a good question to bring up next Tuesday at the informational meeting, because I'm not sure how they participate in an LWRP process.
I'm sure they're not gonna offer to.
It's
Well-
a rehabilitation, so I don't know if does that impact it? I mean, they're not putting a new design up, they're not gonna.
We can get an easy answer for that by calling Natasha Phillips at the Department of State.
Yeah, well, I mean, the first question is, does it trigger a seeker review, an environmental review? They're gonna probably say it's just maintenance, but I don't quite know what the definition is, if they're reconfiguring things. I don't know the scope of work, so,
Well,
I'm just saying, it might
we
be not.
don't know exactly the scope of work either. They will have to go through the seeker process. I believe they will probably, if they make any significant changes to the boundary of the roadway, a curb change, they will probably also have to go through a 1409 review with SHPO because they're a state agency. But any of those questions, we can certainly, those are good questions for next Tuesday.
Okay, so I was just saying that it might be an opportunity to use our code to bill some consultants back to the state.
That's interesting, because numbers 8, 9, 10, are all, actually, 8 and 9 are part of that bridge, that bridge process, the State Street Bridge. So it is part of the scope of this particular estimate.
So that's all I wanted to.
And probably we can also, could ask, I'm sure David at SRF has been through this with the state before, he would know the answer as well. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second for the motion?
And with the amended, what's the amended language?
Subject to approval by the village board before they go into the,
Okay.
Until they go into additional hours.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye? Okay, then the issue of a crossing guard, I had an idea that,
Yeah,
I thought we have a new parking monitor that we might wanna try before we hire someone, which we
Yeah.
haven't budgeted. We could certainly take some of his time and ask him to perform that task and see if it's worthwhile, see if it helps.
in the morning, at
And-
least until we are able to implement something there. I think if we can get that three-way stop in there, we won't necessarily need a crossing guard. Sounds like we used to
But
have.
in the short term, it wouldn't cost anything.
Yeah,
We
no,
have
that's
the
a good,
staffing, and we might have to buy him some new equipment so he has the proper
Yeah.
visibility. But I think that's probably a good quick fix.
that is a
Yeah,
great,
sounds good.
yeah, cause the town pays their, each one of their contractors about 10 grand.
Mhm.
So that would save us a lot of money since, yeah, so I like that idea.
Okay. It's
So,
also-
do we
And
have
that
to put, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
do we have to let the insurance company know? I mean,
Yeah,
this is-
you took the words out
I
of my
will
mouth.
have to talk to Gary, I'll have to look into the cost of the
Is this
equipment and everything else, and I can bring it back to the board next
Yeah,
week.
because this could be a liability issue that
Yeah.
doesn't incur walking around giving tickets.
And then is there training to be done as well, is my other question.
The jobs are very similar, so I doubt the implications would be
Okay.
Just walking on
significant.
the street.
It's worth asking about
Yeah,
though.
but he's guiding people.
Yeah.
He's taking responsibility
Oh,
for
that's a
them.
good
Yeah,
point.
but they're on, it is a village street, it's not
Might have to
It's
go
not
this
490, it's South Street.
It's certainly worth taking a look at.
Yep.
So who
Yeah.
would take that?
Dorothea would do that.
Okay, thanks, Dorothy.
So we'll need to buy him a vest and a little a little, you know,
And a stun gun.
some spikes to throw on.
No stun guns.
It's a great,
Okay, anything else on that?
no?
Nope. Okay, next item we have is approach to code revisions. I attended the planning board meeting, when was that? Last Monday, I guess it was?
No, it was, yeah, 2 days ago.
2 days ago.
No, yesterday.
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 Well, yesterday, and then I attended one a week ago or
Yeah.
2 weeks ago,
2
whenever
weeks
it
ago.
was. In any case, the planning board continues to find some errors in the code and some issues that they would like to discuss with us. I suggested to the board that we schedule another joint session. Steve Lath is also looking through the code. He has a list of things that he has some concerns to. So we don't keep band-aiding this each time at significant expense. What I've suggested to both Steve and the planning board is and we will probably find some errors as well, we collect all of these on a list for maybe the next 2 or 3 months. And then once we have a fairly complete list, then we can send in a new, assuming we all approve them, send in revisions to general code. But it would allow everybody to get a chance to maybe test the new code on a couple of projects and really vet it to make sure we find things that are either incorrect or really don't work the way they were intended to work. So I just wanted to keep everybody in the loop.
So I put that on there, so I'm glad you're here. We definitely want to get your feedback. I think what we're going to do with this is put it in a, we now own the documents. The consultant doesn't own them, we own them. So I really, it was effective the last time to have the Google sheet. The problem was it got spread among a whole bunch of worksheets. So we really want to have a master list. And I really think, I think Renee brought this up the last time. I think a Google Doc is probably better than a Google Sheet, mostly because we can comment on what's there. So I'll set that up. We'll have a master. We'll probably give you, we'll give one person from your board edit capabilities, and then we'll take Steve's stuff in. We'll put it in. Do you have anything yet, or you probably will eventually? You got one.
The photo.
And then also the items that were brought up. I'm glad Lisa's here as well. The items that were brought up at the meeting that we actually voted on, we need to capture those as well as feedback. And then I've gotten some by email sent. So
That all sounds reasonable. I think with the Google Sheets, you are able to see who's editing what. You can go
That's
back
true.
in version history, so you might be able to remove a bottleneck and allow a couple of people to edit the document. But,
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. So I'll just play around with that and we'll get it going.
So we're saying we'll do that before we set up a joint meeting to go over everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
And maybe, Justin, I saw you sent something today.
Did I send something today?
Yeah.
You sent something today.
It's not now.
Oh, no, is that, okay. So you sent the code concerns.
Yeah, so, just so you know, and some of your time scale and planning, there may be some things that basically that are either force us to deny some routine applications or, are gonna make it really, imposing on new businesses trying to come in. I have some concerns about, like, first and foremost is, I didn't see anything in the code that exempted the downtown area from parking requirements. I don't know if that was stuck in there, but that was basically.
I believe that is in there, but I was talking to Susan Rhoda, and she said she had found, and I know we talked about this as a board, that we were going to continue to allow salons on first floor spaces, but she said that's not the way it is in the code.
That's
And
correct.
that's clearly an error.
The question was about the parking though.
Yeah, but I mean, so the basic, if that's not in there properly, and maybe I just didn't miss the section, but no new businesses can go in downtown, which is kind of a problem.
Okay.
There's a pre-existing parking,
Yeah.
But that's not for new businesses.
no. It's use driven, not new business driven.
If it's the same density of use, then the existing, you don't need to provide parking. The only time you would have to provide additional parking is if you have a retail space and you turn it, say, into a higher density use that has greater parking demands. We don't want to create a burden for existing businesses, so somehow you'd have to provide provisions to make that work. But in any other situation, if a store goes out, a new store goes in, there's no parking required.
No new
Are
parking
you,
required.
No new parking, thank you.
so are you saying that because the use is unchanged, it's not a change in use, if it's retail to retail?
Correct.
Now, you have to read, you know,
And I don't know how that's just some of these things that I really wanted cleared up in some of the, code, so we know how to handle these things, but, prior code exempted downtown from all parking requirements. And my concern is I did not see that exemption in the new code. And obviously, the downtown businesses can't build new parking lots. So if that error is correct, then I'm just strongly suggesting that be fixed
The
ASAP.
intent was to match what we did before. And I believe in the old code, there was still a requirement that if you went to a very high density use, you had to
Yes.
have some provision to make the parking
Yep.
function.
it was driven by if your density, if your required parking would increase by the new use, then you would have to show where it was happening.
Yeah, I think it was, if it changed from whenever that code was adopted back in the 80s or whenever it was, and that was kind of hard to enforce because we don't really know what was in place when that code was adopted, but some clarification of that is to be extremely
We'll take
important.
a close look at it, but if it's anything different from what our current or our past code said, then it was an error by the consultant.
And to answer your question about the salons, we
Mhm.
had a
Yeah.
couple meetings about this and decided ideally that would be great, but we're not there yet.
Right.
And so we didn't want to have
Correct.
empty storefronts.
Mhm. Right.
So we weren't there
But,
yet.
but
That's what you
Susan
said.
Loda said that that wasn't reflected in the document. I haven't had a chance to go back and check that section. But we clearly, we directed them to make sure.
I don't remember where we landed, sorry.
I
I do remember where we
I
landed
do
on
too.
that.
No, I don't remember where it landed in the document.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
right. I was like, no, I remember how we, okay.
All right.
Hey, can I make a suggestion? We have a lot of people in the audience that are here for the sewer challenges. What would you say about bumping that up so we could let these?
Yeah,
Good
that,
people
that,
go.
that'd be fine, that'd be fine. Anything else on, code while we're here? Okay, then let's, talk about the sewer break that happened, I guess, last Tuesday on Stonegate Lane. And we talked informally. Would you like to come up and would you like to make a statement to the board?
I'm the one who was impacted,
Yeah.
so, it's hard for me to sit.
Sorry, I was looking for you in the back, sorry.
Yeah, I decided to move up front.
Yep.
You know, with all the stress that we've gone through, I'm hoping there's something in that code that allows a dispensary on Main Street. Because we may need that. Just some history. My name's Michael Cashton. I live at 8 Stonegate with my wife. We've been there, I think, about 5 years. About 3 years ago, we had a similar incident, and at that point, the lines were being flushed out by the village, and, you know, it somehow flushed into our house. The, you know, Penfield Plumbing, I think, was out for us at that point, and they were doing some work for our neighbor. They checked things out and basically said, you know, as long as the town doesn't force everything in there again, you're pretty good to go. They tightened the clean out, whatever it's called. I'm not too technical with this stuff. And then last Tuesday, we had actually a much worse incident, and I've distributed some videos. I don't know how many people have looked at them, but, you know, it's concerning at the least. Talking to some of our neighbors, you know, I was told, and this is anecdotal, but I was told that there were similar incidents at our home 5 or 6 years ago and 12 years ago. And I'm not sure if there were others over the years, but it certainly causes concern. You know, every time it happens, we're not only out a ton of money, because insurance companies don't cover complete destructions of your basements from this. They have a $10,000 limit in their coverage. So it's not the monetary issue for us. My wife is still totally freaked out. She was dealing with this, I was out of town, and it hasn't been a good experience.
It's a horrible thing to happen, and one of the reasons we're taking the time to do a thorough investigation is we want to make sure that whatever is causing it is completely addressed, because we don't want you to have this experience again. If we're liable, then obviously we will make amends for whatever wasn't done. We don't have the answers today. One of the delays in getting the thing fully cambered is the town's truck broke down, as you may or may not know. I'm hoping by the end of the week we'll have some answers as to what is actually going on out there. One of the things that we do know is that there's been a lot of work on the sewer over the years. You heard earlier that, and I'm saying this for the benefit of the other board members, is that we found there was a root cutter that was found in the pipe that should not have been left in there. We don't know who that's from, if it's from someone we had do it, or if it's from someone else, we don't know, but it was in the pipe. That could cause a blockage. There was also a piece of thin-lined PVC pipe in there. That's nothing we would use. That probably washed in there from somewhere. We don't know. We haven't fully cambered the section of pipe that needs to be cambered. There's only 5 houses again above this house, so the flow is fairly minimal on that sewer. But the amount of hydrostatic pressure that you obviously experienced is something else. So it could be there's a pipe, it could be that there's a break in the pipe and water is getting into the system. It could be there's somehow water from storm. We don't know any of that, but we want to find out.
Do we
Because
want to?
whatever
I
it is,
I appreciate the comments, and maybe you can let me finish and then,
Sure.
you know, the fact that it's happened at least once before that I know of, and maybe 3 times before, you know, it's good to hear that it's going to be investigated and it will be looked into, and I hope thoroughly. But I think you can understand that there may be a little bit of skepticism. I've been told by people within the village that pipe is over 100 years old. You mentioned maybe it's closer to 80 years old. In either case, it's old, and in my research, which, you know, is done by Google, you know, I noticed that back in the 30s and 40s, when they would put these lines in, they would use them not just for sewer, but it would be combined for storm water and sewer. And, you know, talking with our neighbors, you know, we suspect, because we all have downspouts, that the downspouts from all the homes are probably releasing into the system. And I understand from my buddy over here, the code inspector, that, you know, that's not allowed under current code, but these homes were built, mine under the 1940 code, if there was one, and, you know, other homes before that. So, you know, just based on my experience as a lawyer and working in the construction field, you know, I know that, you know, your home and how it's built and what happens is judged by the code that was in effect when the home was built. And I think as an architect, you probably are familiar with that. I've hired a civil engineer who started talking to the village and is going to keep in contact with the village. My concern is twofold. One, if stormwater is going into that pipe, I think something needs to be done to have a storm pipe. Two, that pipe, which is clay, it's my understanding from, again, Google searches, that those last anywhere from 50 to 100 years. And with the abuse that this pipe is apparently taken, with potentially settling, tree roots, PVC pipes, I don't know how cutters got in there, but this pipe seems to have been pretty abused. We have a lot of trees all over our street. It's beautiful. I moved into the house of my dreams. I mean, I really did. After growing up here and spending 35 years in Florida and moving back here, you know, we were so excited. And you know, my wife is, you know, she wants to look at homes this weekend. So it's a really bad experience, and I really hope that there's a commitment. If it's our fault, you know, I'm not one to walk away from it. And, you know, we're gonna do whatever. I know we have a pipe that goes from our house to this pipe, and Roto-Rooter has told us it's fine. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Roto-Rooter's the right people, or, you know, I don't deal with many construction individuals in Rochester. But I do sense a commitment, and I hope it's there. And I hope you keep our street advised. Justin has, you know, an email address where people on our street can be contacted as a Stonegate address. So I think we would all appreciate it, and there's probably 3 or 4 neighbors that are here, we would all appreciate updates, because, you know, maybe we're today's victim, and maybe we'll be tomorrow's victim. I don't know. Our house may be just placed in that spot where, because, you know, we are on a low point from up above. But, you know, I think and I hope we stand together as a neighborhood. We have great neighbors, and, you know, we just want the town to do what's right, and to, you know, maintain, replace, and do what is required of you all under the law. That's all we want.
Let me just add some facts to what you said. And you have my commitment. A few years ago, the O'Connors put an addition on, and there was some funky things happening with where the sewer was located. It wasn't where it supposedly was, and there were conflicting things. We went in there, absorbed the cost, because there were errors that happened long before any of us were involved, but we took care of them, and we will do the same for you.
Excuse me, I was just like, I know Tim's not here to speak to this, but it's been my understanding that he told me that you guys did not in fact remedy the situation, that they are still waiting for you guys to install something. Yeah, that's what he said.
And 3 years ago, I had no idea of that, and maybe that somehow impacted the overflow that we had.
Well, we don't.
But, you know, we did ask the town to chip in, because we were out of pocket, and I got, you know, a couple knocks on my door, but really no response. So, you know, again, we want to see, I want to see, and I think everyone wants to see, the response and the action.
Okay, let me just give you a couple pieces of information. The village sewer system was installed with a WPA project in the 30s, so the whole system was put in the 30s. Unlike the city of Rochester, the official sewers that were put in, there's nowhere in the village that the sanitary sewer was ever authorized for stormwater use. We have records of all this. We have maps of when this was all put in the 30s with the dates on it. One of the tasks we have here in the office is to have the records archivist go through the records, and we'll find out what the history is on the installation of the sewers on Stonegate. I don't know, but we'll see what we can dig up, and we will certainly share that information with you. I think, you know, obviously we're not at the end of the investigation. We're also going to have the village engineer take a look at it once we have the results of Cameron, but we've just got to get the information together before we can solve this mystery. But if it's our responsibility, we will take care of it.
Michael, I have a question for you. How did they stop it? And are they sure in the short term, before all this can be solved, that it won't happen again?
Again, I was out of town, so I don't know how they stopped it, number one. Number two, I don't know. Right now, I have no assurances that it won't happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that scares me, which is why I've got a civil engineer talking with the village, and hopefully we'll be out at our house in the next couple of days. And, you know, I'll spend whatever it takes to put in whatever equipment, whether, you know, that if we don't have it, that will stop it. I mean, I was told earlier that, you know, the clean out, you know, there's so much pressure that it blew it out. The water blew it out, and that's where the water was coming in from. That's what Roto-Rooter told you, right?
Mhm. Which,
So, do I feel safe? No. I mean, I do feel a little bit safe, because he also told me that they have the system running past our house, that the roots were cut near our house. So I'm satisfied that it's not blocked right there and building up pressure into my house.
So the roots were cut between the incident and today?
It's, if you don't mind me speaking, I've been on the phone with a couple different entities. I was on the phone with your civil engineer earlier talking, kind of going over some of the points of it. And then I contacted Roto-Rooter. They claim they staked out from his house 150 feet, clear. Which is kind of curious as to how they could get out 150 feet clear if we have a root blockage, a complete blockage in there. So there's a little more going on here. There's something very curious going on here. Why you'd find a big chunk of thin wall Schedule 10 PVC in a sewer line is very concerning, which usually is used for an irrigation system of some sort, not a sewer or a drain line. So the gentleman who actually did the cameraing wasn't available yet today to talk to me from Roto-Rooter. I'll make a point of contacting him, or he's supposed to contact me tomorrow. I want to find out exactly what he saw, if it, at all possible, if they videotaped it. It would be really nice to see what they found. We have another, Jack is hired or authorized to get another camera in there tomorrow, a better system. So that we can go up through the whole thing. Today, the town's truck went in and broke down. So we were having a problem, because once it broke down, it created its own mess in the pipe. But everything is flowing.
You did tell me it was flowing.
Oh, yeah, up above you is completely, I mean, you're talking 2 inches of water, down below them, 2 inches of water. So there's no blockage at this point. But the curious thing with his situation is that the water that came in your house was clear.
They told me there was some sludge, but a lot of it was clear, yeah, so I don't know.
Which is, you know what I mean, if it's a sewer line back up and blockage, that should have been not clear, you know what I mean? So there's something, there may be a groundwater issue associated with, because you've also got problems above him on West Jefferson. The house is up there.
Yeah, I looked at I actually walked in Justin's yard the other day, because you weren't home and I didn't want to go on your property. But I was looking at the drainage, and it looks like there's a fairly good slope behind your house away from it. So it's that I don't think, there is another hydrology issue to the south, but I don't think that's impacting where the sewer, because it looks like the sewer is actually higher than all of that.
Correct, that's why it's curious, so why it'd be clear, but you got water, you know, groundwater. He said he had more water in your backyard than you normally had this year, correct?
Yeah, we did, and we noticed that, but I can't imagine it's a related issue.
I think that's a separate issue, but the other thing I was gonna tell you is, when we did the work near O'Connor's and their neighbor, one of the things that made our remedy take longer is we didn't have an easement. Stonegate is the only area in the village, I believe, where we don't have a clear easement where the sewer is. So we actually had to get an easement from O'Connor's to do the work, to do the remedy. And that suggests to me that it may not have been the village that put the sewer in. We don't know that, but we'll go through the records and we can probably find that out. Because if the village did put it in, it's quite possible that when those homes were built, they tied the downspouts into the sewer, and that could be part of the problem. We just don't know that yet.
Yeah, what I'm saying, we'll do a complete and thorough investigation of all those lines and try and figure out what's connected, who's connected, and where and why, how it was possible to get enough pressure to either come up through his floor drain like a bubbler or to blow that cap off. So, and the gentleman from Rotor said he sealed that cap this time. He said that he put a seal around it so that there's.
Okay, yeah, I heard it was something, so maybe.
Yeah, he told me he's confident that you can't blow that clean out off again.
So if we do find something, if say there's a break or sometimes the joints come apart, we'll have to dig. And we have a reserve fund in the sewer fund that we built up specifically for things like this. And we will take care of it in short order if we find that. So the first thing is we just gotta find out where the problem is and then we'll figure out how to address it.
Is this the only, 8 Stone Gate is the only one that this happened to, or is it?
Yeah, that's the other thing that's kind of curious, is nobody above him had an issue. So that's, you know, it seems to be a
The street slopes almost like that,
yeah.
So
so,
you're at the
you know, we're
lowest
kind of
point.
at a low point, and then it straightens out.
Yeah, but you're at the base of the slope, so it makes sense that it might,
Then it would be
whatever's
yours.
going on.
Very
might affect
lucky.
you. Yeah.
I'm gonna go buy the house that's up on the top.
Well, I want to investigate too, make sure, because I'm contacting different plumbers to make sure that nobody else is doing something above you. You know, I mean, people do work without us knowing, you know, I mean, if it's an interior job or they're doing some plumbing work, you won't know unless you see that truck there or catch them out. So, that's why I want to do a thorough investigation to make sure that somebody else above you didn't do something. Because what you said is the time before this happened, they were flushing the line. Which, when you're flushing a line, you're talking 1,500 to 3,000 PSI of pressure. It makes sense if there was some sort of a blockage or slowage that and that's what their concern yesterday. We had to wait till a car moved because we wanted to open up the manhole to give the pressure relief. Because otherwise you throw 3,000 PSI in the system, somebody's toilet's gonna let the air out. You know what I mean? So obviously that time there was pressure and it could have been a partial cause. But this time, you know what I mean, why, I still feel like something else, you know, was attributed to that type of pressure to come out.
So there's a lot of moving pieces here, but the one thing I wanted to tell you is it's urgent that we solve this. We understand that. We wouldn't want this to happen to our homes. We certainly don't want it to happen to you, anyone else, and certainly not to happen again. So you have our commitment that we'll follow this through to get this solved.
Can you guys humor me for about 4 or 5 minutes to sort of project manage the action items for this? Because I hear a lot of promises that we're making, and I want to make sure that we have a good list of who's doing what when. So can you just give me a couple? Can I grab that flipboard there?
And usually a problem with us coming in and doing some investigating.
No, it's totally transparent.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we find out.
You're not gonna find the more transparent.
I don't remember any outstanding issues on O'Connor's, do you?
I look into it, but I don't either.
Yeah.
We do.
I thought that was all resolved,
I thought so too, yeah.
because we paid the bill for these.
So Michael, you're having an engineer come out,
Get my map
right?
Yes,
Civil engineer, you said?
yes.
Steve, you're talking to Roto-Rooter about what
Rotor, I'm
they
talking to
videoed?
civil engineer, and then kind of working with our sewer department and the towns.
Engineer, what's the solution to, because, you know, obviously the big concern is it doesn't happen again, so we to do something quickly. So you mentioned, Roto-Rooter, the engineer, and there was a third, the town and village. Why is the town involved in this? They have the right kind of truck?
Because the town has equipment that we don't have, and we have a labor and equipment sharing agreement with the town sewer department.
And they have a camera that we don't have, it was.
You're looking for video from the Roto-Rooter?
Hopefully, yeah, or at least to contact with the gentleman who did videotape it, so I can talk to him and find out what he saw when he was going through.
Look, he worked for us, but if you need a release from me, it's no problem.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
have a question along these lines. So
Sure.
you said your truck broke down today on our street. It's not not gonna be up and running until Friday. So what are you guys gonna do in between Tuesday and
This is-
Friday to get a camera
What's
in
that?
there?
We hired
Scans.
another camera crew with a better camera, one that will go through, no
It
matter,
should be
you
up
know,
tomorrow.
that is a better system to come up and go through the whole pipe.
And they're gonna be there when?
They're gonna be there tomorrow. It's a company called Scanex. This is their specialty.
Yeah, and
Okay.
we want to get a thorough look at the whole pipeline to find out what connections are in there, you know, where things are coming from, so we can make a good, you know, good analysis.
Obviously,
You know,
yeah.
we really gotta get a picture of the whole thing to see why and where this is coming from.
When were the roots trimmed? Does anybody know? I wish Zach was here.
That's when, I need to talk to Roto-Rooter, because like I said, he told me that a younger guy went out and not unknowingly or whatever, he drove through 150 feet of line.
And when was this?
Pardon?
When was this?
Whenever Mike had Roto-Rooter there.
It's
But
like
they,
last
what do
week.
you mean they drove through? He got his camera through?
Camera and a car, and a snake.
Oh, they cuts the roof?
Dan, another item is to put dye down the
Yeah,
downspouts.
he claims that the guy
That would be
was
Zach.
an extra thing and made 150 feet, which is kind of strange, because they're saying that when they came backwards up, they hit a hard block. You know what I mean, from the other end, and this guy's saying he made 150 feet, which would be past the manhole down below you. Yeah, so that's why I need to talk to him and find out exactly what, you know.
If you, I'll give you my number and maybe we can talk to them together, Joe.
Yeah, and then if you would do me a favor and email me the video, I'd like to see that, if you can.
Sure.
So we need to ask Zach when the last time the roots were trimmed. I just wanna know, was it between Tuesday and today? I wanna know, has anything changed between Tuesday and
Well, they flush the lines apparently twice a year, correct?
Correct.
And you said it was last,
spring?
Zach told me that they checked it last, I thought he said June 19th. I think it was
yes,
June.
earlier you said June 19th was the last.
Because he was aware that this is a problem area and it's checked more frequently than other places in the village because of that, because they know there's been a problem in the past.
Okay, Bob, you mentioned there was a new thing, which is a dye.
Putting dye down the downspouts.
Who's responsible for doing that?
We-
Zach,
Zach.
Yeah, what we'd like to do is try and figure out what and who's jumping into where.
where the downspouts flow to.
Okay.
And if we could do it at Justin's house, because he's next door, that might be helpful also.
So 8, and what's your number, Justin?
6.
Okay, and you mentioned there was the archivist should look up just the history of,
The history for the sewer, both the village sewer and then also for the history of development of Stonegate Lane.
I guess whether there's a storm drain also that's available on the street. There's no gutter, so I don't see how.
I don't think there is a storm drain, because even, there would normally be catch basin somewhere that, with a manhole, and there's no sign of that, so.
There's the one in the back.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Yep.
I was a sanitary inspector in Cape May County, New Jersey for a while, so I did a lot of dye testing and things. But you had mentioned that your floor drain actually was backing up?
No, he said it was the,
Oh, okay, I
the
misunderstood.
cleanup.
Oh, the cleanout is in at the floor
Oh,
level,
the clear out, the cleanup, okay.
which is
Oh, I thought
connected to that
the
floor
drain
drain.
itself, because I was gonna say, if the floor drain's backing up, floor drain shouldn't be connected to a sanitary sewer.
Correct, it shouldn't be, but back in the day in the
Oh,
40s.
sure, yeah, when they came out and said that.
I'm sure, because there's a toilet right on the other side of the wall, correct?
And
Or
there are different color
There was.
dyes that
It's
are
all
available, to determine that, because we would generally, for a black water system, which is your toilet, that type of thing, we use a green dye, and there's red dyes. There's different dyes, and that way it might help you determine, or you could just use a certain dye, a certain property, and it's just an idea.
okay.
But I misunderstood what he said about, it was coming out of his floor drain, I was like, whoa, wait a second.
Right, I believe the floor drain is tied to the sanitary in the system,
Yeah.
and it shouldn't be.
No.
It should be, at minimum, probably capped off, so that you don't have the sanitary issue coming up through that drain.
Mm-hmm.
Because they fully put in backflow preventers in that too, correct?
That's my understanding, and
Yeah.
I didn't,
And
I didn't,
it takes a
do
lot,
anything to that house since.
it takes a lot of pressure to break a backflow preventer. A a lot of pressure, which,
My civil engineer kind of told me differently, so they have issues when there's high pressure.
right, high pressure, but you're talking gravity, you're not talking, I can understand if you were flushing line with 3,000 PSI, you could blow it, but in a regular gravity system, you generally should not produce that kind of pressure.
Especially because you've only got 5 houses above you.
Yeah, you're talking a 6-inch line, you know what I mean, it's a 6-inch sewer right there.
There was one other thing you were going to do, which was kind of survey the rest of the block, survey whoever's upstream and find out.
Correct, yeah, we just wanna find out all what's going into that sewer and figure out the best way to solve, so that it never happens again. That's the whole issue, you don't ever want this to happen to somebody's home.
And it only, the sewer line only runs up
We
Stone
need
Gate.
to get an easement if we dig.
We're sure it doesn't come in from Jefferson
It
or
was
from.
totally separate
Lincoln.
property, it was
Property.
a singular property at one point, a single house on the front end.
Dan, one more task.
Yep,
If we do have to dig, either on this gentleman's property or someone else, we're gonna have to get an easement because we aren't legally allowed to dig on your property unless we have an easement.
okay.
We could do a temporary something or other, wouldn't have to be a full easement.
But this is just one more step.
That's if we did.
So Michael, I have another question. When this happened, to your property like 3 years ago, was it determined at that point what the cause of it was?
We assumed it was the back, what do you call it, the
Back
flushing of the system?
Back pressure,
The
yeah.
back pressure. And we were told that they wouldn't do that again. So that's why I was like, okay, we're good.
But they didn't have like cameras come out or anything at that point
No,
to see
they
what
didn't.
was going on?
No, none of this.
Was that?
I mean, this is the first
We
time
were
I've ever
between
run this.
people and Mike
So,
and
yeah.
Cory.
I was kind of,
It was a messy time.
Okay.
I guess, I was satisfied that
Right,
we knew what the cause was.
right, okay. I was just curious.
Renee is taking over for me. I'm injured.
He
No,
slipped
it's
on the
okay.
ice and I see
Thanks,
him
Dan.
over here going, I don't know if there's anything more to do.
Please don't
But
imitate me
please
in
let it
public
be
again.
laid out.
Anything else? So I think so his main contact is Steve or Zach?
I think probably Steve. Steve's in the office, he's
Yeah.
easier to reach.
Yep.
You're welcome to talk to either one, but Steve is probably the easiest person to reach, and Steve is up to speed on what's going on.
The only thing I don't see on your list, which I think maybe is important, is that the town hires a civil engineer.
We are. We actually have a civil engineer, and once we get the information from the camera, we're gonna have him out on the site to look at everything that's
Put
going on.
that down under trustees.
Yeah, and his name is Scott Harder.
Just curious, what's the total number of, single-family homes on Stone Gate Lane?
12, 15?
Yeah, about 12.
Yeah, I think it's about 12.
14,
Thank you.
okay.
Okay.
But there's only 5 above his house.
Well, above his house, there's only 3 above your house, right?
No, you got the other side of the
Go
street.
around the street,
You go around the curve.
Yeah, but there's the O'Connors.
You got 10,
The
12,
Valenti's, yeah.
11,
Oh, the
13.
Valentes, that's what I'm forgetting.
Yeah.
So there's 4.
Goes up around the corner.
Yeah, there's 2 on the other side, and there's 3 on your side of the street that are above. Okay, thank you for coming in tonight.
Already done.
And
Okay.
All right, thank you, and we appreciate your commitment.
we look forward to
And
getting
hold
this
you
out.
to it.
Sorry.
All right, all right, thanks again. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Yeah, somebody that thinks they do it, curious to see it there.
Thank you.
Thanks. See you, Michael.
Yeah, I'll stick around.
Okay, next item we have is, in our initial meeting with DOT regarding the replacement of the deck on the State Street Bridge, one of the things we discussed was the detour. The official detour is, do you remember what that was, Renee?
I actually have it here, yes. The detour is going, eastbound will go up 96 to Route 31F and then 490 to get around it. Westbound is gonna be I-490 to 31F to Route 153 to Route 96. So we know people who know that they can skirt around through Shane Place are gonna do that instead.
They
So-
offer to consider shutting off Shane Place severing it, which I think the businesses would not like. They could also make it one way. I think that would be very unpopular with the businesses as well.
But that would also encourage speeding. That it's two ways slows everybody
Slows,
down.
absolutely. My one concern about keeping it open is that because there will be more traffic, there may be damage done to the speed humps. So either A, maybe they temporarily come out, or B, we ask the DOT to repair them after the detour. Last time they did this was in 1984 when they replaced the Main Street Bridge and Shane Place was the detour. And they came back after that project and completely repaved the street.
Okay.
I would hope that perhaps in this situation, they would do the same either before or after the bridge was put in place. And the street right now is, it's getting at the end of its useful life, so that might be something that we want to discuss with them at our next meeting with DOT.
Okay, and the other thing that we were considering is a light on either end
Right.
as well to help
Correct.
regulate it. And I would not advocate for taking those speed humps out. I think we should leave it open.
I agree with you,
But-
Renee, I'm just suggesting all
I'm
options.
sorry, I think we need to stop, we don't have a full board.
Oh, that's a good point.
Sorry, we're Dan Wood.
Please, out there.
You can move the speed bumps to Sutherland Street.
There you go. That's another discussion, actually, because there certainly is an issue on Sutherland Street.
We don't have a quorum at the table.
Sorry.
That's all right, we were talking about the
We were
bridge.
talking about Shane Place and the detour end.
Yeah.
And Renee brought up the point that one of the other options was potentially a stoplight, a temporary stoplight at State Street and Shane Place.
That's what DOT offered, they gave us several different options.
And my thought is if they do a stoplight, wouldn't it be great if it was permanent?
Yeah, it would be a way to habituate people to a light there anyway.
And if the Wilmerite project comes back, it may be necessary in the future anyway.
Yeah.
Is one lane of the bridge going to be open?
No, it's
No.
gonna
So then
closed
why would you
completely.
need a stoplight if you're going that way? If
To
there's
just
no other,
just
just
to
to habituate, just slow everybody down.
just to slow everyone down, and DOT presented that idea to help just be aggressive drivers. that are
Because
gonna
of
be-
staging of the project, and they're not only replacing the concrete deck, they're replacing the steel beams below the concrete deck, so it's a significant project. They may have to reduce the end of Shane Place to one lane during parts of the project for staging around the abutments. And that would be the reason that the light is. The other option is
That
that
makes sense.
the light may also be at North Main Street because there will be
Right.
more traffic coming out of Shane Place.
I can see that being really useful.
And better for the neighbors there, because people are gonna whip around there and turn a right in there to get
Right.
around it,
Well, they're
so.
gonna take it as a yield, basically,
Right.
because the bridge will be closed,
Right.
they'll just think it's a continuous loop
Right.
right there.
Right, exactly.
So I was thinking the opposite. We have to provide some feedback to DOT about what we wanna do with Shane Place. These Shane Place is not gonna be the detour. The designated detours are gonna be these workarounds that I just mentioned, and no, that's what the signage is gonna say, but anyone who drives through here knows that they can cut through Shane Place. So I would make sure not to take those speed humps out. Yeah, they may get destroyed, but if we take them out, people are gonna drive even faster. And I would actually advocate for putting maybe some temporary ones up.
I have another idea.
yeah.
What if we had talked to DOT before about putting in crosswalks at Shane Place and State and Durham Way and State?
Yeah.
If we put them in before this, it would help moderate the speed of traffic
I
running
think-
through that.
From that last meeting, it sounds like those improvements are
Mhm.
gonna be in 2020, so
Okay,
that might
okay.
actually be a possibility. So we
Mhm.
need to just, I mean, part of what SRF will do is kind of make sure we have all of those things on deck.
Right.
We also want to talk to the businesses there, and I reached out to the Chamber of Commerce only 2 of the Shane Place businesses are actually members of the Chamber of Commerce. I was hoping they could help organize a meeting so that we could get their thoughts on how we want to handle that. In lieu of that, I reached out to Steve and he's putting together a list. No hurry on that. I
We
know your
have-
plate is full.
I'm sorry.
He's gonna get the list to me of
Okay.
all of the
If
businesses.
there's
we contact.
all the business in Shane Place, we can talk, you know, Renee can contact them and discuss the closure.
We have the list that we did maybe a year ago,
Okay.
so we've got a pretty good one sitting around, pretty
Right.
fresh one.
If you can find it there
Yeah.
for me, then I
You
can
know where it
update
is.
it.
Lily had this done. Remember, every business in the village was
Okay.
surveyed.
And we have their email?
We,
Or phone
no,
number?
we have their names and addresses.
Okay, no, it would be, okay.
Yeah.
If we.
Either way, whatever, I'll go door to door.
What we've done in the past is we've had, the building, or excuse me,
Parking
the
lot.
parking monitor go door to door and retrieve the contact information for each business, and we could certainly have Mike do that.
Okay, because we'll want to get them together,
Yep.
just to make sure that we're supporting them the best way that we can. And I think they probably won't want the road to be closed. I can
No.
most assuredly
Yeah.
say that, but we want to make sure that we include them. There's a public meeting on the 17th. It's really inconvenient. The time
I
is
know
from
it's 2 to 5.
2 to 5, which
Yeah.
is not an ideal time for public engagement.
I think what they said at the last meeting is that, you know, we're at a certain phase in the project, but there's going to be another information meeting once the design's finalized. And what we could ask is that that meeting maybe be held in the evening, so people who work could attend.
Yeah, so that it will be closed from the bridge, to answer your question, Dan, March to Labor Day. So it's a long time. We can look at Fairport. The situation's slightly different, but we can take a few lessons from them too, so.
I was curious, why wouldn't they close it when the weather's not so good? Because that Shane Place's popular time and use is when, in that period.
Well, they're waiting till, the ideal time to do road work is, which is usually March. And then they're trying to get it all done. It's gonna mess up the school buses, so they were trying to pick a time that would be
Oh, yeah.
listed.
Traffic on 31, after June goes down significantly, so
Oh,
it's
okay.
actually an optimal time.
Yeah.
The other thing is you'll still have access to Shane Place, so hopefully it won't be catastrophic for the businesses there.
Yeah. So there's no ideal time to
Right,
shut down a
there's
bridge
no
that,
good time,
yeah, that has that many.
I really hope you guys will push for the Main Street light. It's really hard to take a left out of it.
Yeah,
We agree.
yeah, and it'll only
So-
be worse.
It'll only
And
be
it was
worse.
their idea, it was
Yeah.
DOT's suggestion, so, I think it'll be
I feel stronger about that than the State Street one. If I
Yeah.
had to choose only one, I'd choose Main.
they weren't making us choose only one.
Okay,
Actually,
right,
they're
great.
waiting to hear from us about what we'd like to do, and one of their things was a light at both ends, so,
Beautiful.
I think after the bridge opens, I'd love to see a
yeah,
light.
then we get to leave it there.
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Okay, moving on. Dan, you asked to put Airbnb and VRBO on
Yeah.
in the
So,
agenda.
a resident, there have been some problems on our favorite street, Maple Street, and one of the houses is an Airbnb there, and they had some problems maybe a year ago with college students renting it out. Doesn't this sound fun, Jeff? And they would rent it out and have a party house out of it, and it was a nuisance to the neighbors. So we told them that, your best recourse is to call the police when it's bothering you. And we talked about implementing something in the code specific to Airbnb and VRBO. And we went down this route when we were talking about it, but we never really finished it. And one of the ideas was that, we put in code, because they've done this in other municipalities, that sure, you can rent a house on Airbnb or VRBO if you live there, if it's your primary residence or a primary residence of yours. But purely for profit is not encouraged. So I just wanted to put that back out there. because it is a nuisance in that neighborhood. And the way our houses are designed, they're also right up next to each other.
Is this a house, so no one,
No one
they
lives there.
only use it for Airbnb, it's not rented like on a lease basis? Well, I guess Airbnb is sort of a lease, but it's short term.
Yeah, and remember we went down this route because we were talking about like, well, what if you put your house for sale, but it hasn't sold yet, but you've moved, and that would be a good time to rent it out, you know, on an Airbnb. So I've seen in other municipalities that they've put that in there. Obviously, it's tough to enforce. How do you enforce whether somebody's living there or not?
Well, the Airbnb would be, you know, we'd have to have them registered first off, and then Bob and I were actually talking about this a little bit too, the fact that having the owner reside in the Airbnb makes a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
How the place is kept, the control.
Yeah.
Now, the opposite side of the VRBO is a vacation rental by owner. Typically, you are renting a facility, you don't rent it because the owner lives there. You know what I mean? It's a vacation rental. You're going there to have your family or, you know what I mean, a group. You could make stipulations. I know there are certain VRBO associations that will only rent to 21 and over.
Yeah, and that's what we remember. We had to find the owner of the place, and we wrote him a letter. This was maybe a year ago, because it was on the tax rolls, and that's how we looked it up.
We might want to take a look at the ordinances in the town of Victor, and I know the village of Skaneateles has been grappling with this issue for a few years, so I think those would be two. Why don't we get those two model ordinances, and then we could circulate them so we have something to discuss at next meeting.
And let's just put it on the list for maybe .1 code revisions.
You said Victor and Skaneateles?
Village of Skaneateles.
Yeah, I think when we go down the road of the rental registration and stuff, that would be, you know, they would have to nomenclate the difference between these being, you know, renting an apartment versus you're an Airbnb. And then there's, you know, certain stipulations along with an Airbnb, less than 3 rooms or less. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Time constraints on how long you can rent to somebody. So.
And I think, you know, if we have a good model ordinance, hopefully some of the legal issues are vetted, so
Right.
we can, some of the work will be done.
Of course, the contrary point of view is that it's an illegal use right now.
Mhm.
It's not allowed. And you enforce it, it becomes known under those circumstances, where you rent it to a bunch of college kids and then you enforce it. You struggle very hard with straight up B&Bs.
Mhm.
You know, this is a lessening layer of control.
But the challenge there is I'm not sure we want to make illegal Airbnbs.
They are right now. Not a
A
permitted
B&B is not a permitted use, and Airbnb is not specified either way.
If it's not allowed, it's prohibited.
Yeah.
If it's not allowed, it's prohibited. So if you're renting to a group of people for a short-term lease, that's an Airbnb and it's not permitted.
I think there's some provision about multifamily definitions being more than 30 days.
Yeah.
And B&Bs are specific, so I think I'd agree with Jeff. I think all the definitions were kind of designed to rule this kind of thing out.
Yeah, this is, so which is not a bad thing. So if you wanted to make it a permitted use, you would bring it in the way that you're talking about bringing it in.
I think it still makes sense to look at the model code.
Oh, yeah,
because then
definitely.
we can figure out what we want to do.
I guess my point was, you should start from the frame of reference that it's not a permitted use, so you could do whatever you want in terms of making it permitted use.
Mhm.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay.
All right, so
I'll peruse it from Alco, Scan, Victor, and a few others and see what they have in regards to Airbnb.
that'd be great. Thank you, Steve.
I found one in California that had outlawed it based on what we talked about, which was unless it's your primary residence. It wasn't primary because you could say a snowbird, they can rent it out when they're not here.
Right,
It's not
right.
their, you know, I know a lot of people that live in Florida and are here, you know, that kind of thing. So, but I did have some good language. I'll find it and send it to you.
Okay.
But we're at least open to discussing putting a little bit more boundaries around this.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think, Renee?
I'm not in favor of saying no Airbnbs under
Right.
any
I'm not either.
circumstances, because they're,
It's your house.
Yeah.
Right, I think you're gonna
So
allow
I think
people to
that-
make, if they can obviously make a little money to utilize their property, especially somebody, you know, like, in my situation, we're empty nesters now, you know, I mean, I have literally a 4-bedroom house that I, you know.
There's,
Renee, I'm sorry to
No, I was
interrupt.
gonna
Go
say,
ahead.
we travel and we, rent Airbnbs all the time
We
as a
do too.
family because we don't like to stay at a hotel, we like to cook ourselves, we're very respectful, so they're putting some, there are benefits, I mean, you bring a family in here for a college weekend and, parents bring the kids and they have a nice family time and they're not necessarily throwing big parties and,
Yeah.
they're coming here and they're,
Well, the Airbnb are kinda cool, you get to see different entities
You
versus going to a
experience-
hotel.
yeah, you
it's an
experience the neighborhood differently, so, I do think that some restrictions around it make sense though.
I was just gonna say, there's one on my street, and that's not a problem. It's a family that lives there, and occasionally there's other people staying there, but it's always very low key. Okay, I agree with you guys. All right, next item. We have seeker on the Town of Pittsford Erie Canal Park and Preserve. And I believe they're requesting permission to be lead agency.
Yeah.
And that makes sense to me. Is there any discussion on this issue?
Makes sense to me as well.
Okay.
Justin, did you see this?
They've already processed it.
We have already processed it, and we may send them comments.
Yeah. As an
Um,
interested party.
Yeah, and what we've requested from them is one of our concerns is about this vacant building, and they're talking to Kelly Klein about how that is, what the fire department is, concerns are, and what, without a fire access road and emergency vehicle. So we're hoping Kelly Klein will get back to us, before the town board meets next Tuesday. We're meeting next Monday. So if we have any comments, we told them we'd try to send them some by Tuesday. Right, I'm not sure if we'll send them comments or not, but hopefully we'll hear more, and Kelly may clear up a lot of questions that we had.
All right, would someone like to make a motion?
And that motion should include authorizing Bob to sign this and do not wish to be lead agency.
I make a motion that, can I just say?
What Jeff said?
Yeah, what
Yeah.
Jeff said, did you get it?
Do we have a second?
I'll second what Jeff said.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Do you wanna do that? Do you wanna do it now, or do you want, Dorothea, do you wanna do it?
You can do it now. and
Yeah.
I
All
can-
right, yeah, I'll work on it, you keep going. I'll just
Keep
hand it to
going,
you.
okay. We met on the union contract, we met with Dave Wallert and Brad on Friday. Most of the issues are resolved. There are a couple of outstanding issues. We had proposed a 2.5% increase. The reason we had proposed that is because a survey indicated that our starting salary and our general salaries are below the market for other villages. We also felt, and we talked at length with Zach about this, one of the needs for the DPW is to retain people that have a skill set. We've had a few people that have moved through that have been sort of disappointing in their performance. So we think that makes sense. Christian reviewed Dave Weiler's proposal today. We still need some answers from him and a response from Dave Weiler. We have to schedule a special meeting anyway, so we're gonna present this at the special meeting that we're gonna talk about later in this meeting. Anything I've forgotten, Dorothea?
Yeah, that
I think
covers
that's a
it.
pretty good summary.
All right, you just sign, right, Bob?
Yep.
Sign. the bottom.
Right there.
Signature line, yep.
Okay.
And then give it to Dorothea, she can make copies. Please, thank
While you're doing that, I have one small member item. Justin, I'm glad you're here. I got an email from the new brewery down at Northfield Commons,
Copper Kettle.
and they're asking for they're asking like, what do we do with our sign? And like, we're about to want to go buy a sign. So I assume you can guide them through
We
that.
already talked
You've
about
talked to them? Okay.
Yeah.
It's funny, I
He
got
said
that.
that they may be applying for a variance for something associated with the sign,
Okay.
and if something
Because they
comes in,
wanna
we'll look at it.
Yeah, they wanna run a sign perpendicular to the building versus parallel because of their location, the sign would never be seen from the road. And I wrote back to Brian they are willing, or they have the ability to apply for a variance to be able to run a hanging sign out over the door versus flat on the face of the building.
Yeah.
Is this before the APRD yet?
No.
Okay.
So
This
they-
is,
This was the first email from him today in regards to signage.
Okay, so, just as a brief comment to help coordinate any of this, I can talk to Bill. Last time we looked at, a request for, a unique sign, we really wanted input from the, HPB to indicate, well, are there some alternatives that they would recommend? Is this like the best option? We don't look at signs very often, so
Right.
I think, if they're coming in, we'd like to involve them, I guess is all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, well, they would be either way, yes. Right.
Okay.
Well,
So
no, I
they
think
should
Justin,
start,
what you're saying is you would like some input ahead of what decision you make.
Correct.
So
I have the
just-
decision.
So just, once you get your application, just either send some kind of communication to Bill and the board will talk about it and get back to you.
Yeah, so we had the benefit before that, I think both our boards are meeting the same day, and Bill just wandered over, and we asked him a bunch of questions, and he was able to help clarify a bunch of things for us, so. So you're saying we should just do a referral?
I think that, well, it's great that Bill could answer the questions, but I think you should be more comfortable with a actual board response, I think.
Okay.
so they should start with an application for a variance with you or you? With you, okay. You know those guys, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, next item, report from the office staffing committee. Do you want to report on what Mary's plans are, Dorothy?
Mary we have officially heard from her. Her official retirement date is December 27th.
Oh, good for her.
We're working with retain her for a short term. As we need a special meeting with the union, we'll be coming back at that time. We're finalizing with her some discussions, so we'll be bringing it to the board. So we're hoping, as Bob said, to schedule a special meeting for next week for the board.
Mary has suggested that she would be willing to work full-time for a few more months to allow us to, number one, assist us with next year's budget process, which is going to be very helpful. She may stay longer, part-time. She's trying to figure out for herself what schedule would be reasonable and make sense. And we've had one meeting so far with a staffing group, including Mary, Dorothea, Frank, and myself, to figure out a plan for how we want to staff the office. We're looking at different options, including consultants, consulting out some of the bookkeeping duties, also considering Dorothea needs help in the office. We've been short-staffed for some time, and Dorothea has borne a heavy load. So all of that, we hopefully within the next month and a half, we'll come up with a plan. Anything else I've forgotten, Dorothea? Okay.
That's that about covers it.
Okay, 75 Monroe. I had a call this morning from Chris DiMarzo asking to meet with us to talk about the reduction in the proposed settlement from Alan Knopf. I told Chris that I would be happy to meet with him, but would want to bring another trustee with me, but didn't want to do that without first talking to the rest of the board. Also, Chuck Malcolm emailed me yesterday, and he would like to talk to the board about a counter proposal for Alan Knopf's reduced settlement proposal. So I wanted to find out some dates, and obviously we'll talk to Lily and Frank and try to get some dates that will work for all of us, so we can have a attorney-client session with Chuck Malcolm.
Okay.
So Renee and Dan, if you could give Dorothea some times that would work for you.
I'm here. I'm not traveling through the holidays.
Well, we were kind of hoping for next Tuesday if we can do something like 6 o'clock,
Would that work for you two?
because then we could do the special meeting and probably schedule a Chuck, and that would give me a little free chance to get everything scheduled.
Next Tuesday.
17.
Yeah, the 17th.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, what time?
I say 6.
6 o'clock, would that work?
Sounds good.
Okay, I'll check with Chuck Malcolm tomorrow and let everybody know.
So is that, we meet here, or is that a, conference call, or we don't know?
Well, we'll do both. We'll,
Okay.
We can
however
do
we
it
can
either way.
schedule
If
Chuck,
you wanna call in, you could.
Well,
I think I
we can
can
schedule
make it here on
Chuck.
time, but,
and then maybe we can do the special meeting to resolve the union and the staffing at that point.
Okay.
and your other meeting, but, that you just mentioned, what's your target for that one? Meeting with-
Chris wanted to meet Thursday. I can't meet Thursday because I have a full schedule that day. I also want to talk to Chuck Malcolm to make sure if there's any cautions from Chuck. So I told Chris the first thing I would talk to all of you and see if that was acceptable to you. Also, I need somebody to come with me because I wouldn't do that alone.
I'll gladly go with you to meet with Chris.
Okay.
So I'll come with you?
If you'd like, sure.
I think that's a good idea. Okay, so the two of you are gonna work your schedules and,
Dan, are you available Friday morning?
I am.
Can I suggest that you talk to Chuck before you
I
meet with
will.
Chris?
I will, yeah.
that's
So, I thought you meant this Friday.
Well, I was thinking this Friday, but I'm gonna talk to Chuck tomorrow, so this is conditional upon Chuck's.
Well, I was thinking that the board might want to talk to Chuck
for the two of them.
before
That's a
you
good
two
idea.
meet with
That's a good idea.
Chris.
Oh, so do it after the
Well,
17th.
let's do it after Tuesday, okay?
Okay, is there any pressure? Do we need to meet with Chuck this week so that we can then meet with Chris on Friday?
I don't know, I just thought you should hear from your.
I would be open to meeting with Chuck sooner. We wouldn't need you, Dorothea, if you don't have.
No, I'm just trying to think. You have Frank out of town and Lily is sick, so you're.
It would have to, Frank is back Thursday, so we, potentially Friday or over the weekend, we could do it.
You're not really gaining any time.
Yeah, I would have
Just
to
realize
check.
that. Thank
I
you.
think it's an important issue, and out of courtesy, we should allow everybody to
Absolutely.
be at that meeting. So let's try to figure that out, and then we'll try to set up a date, Dan, okay? All right. All right, member items.
No, the 75 Monroe
The
item
information
that I
meeting.
put
Yeah,
on
thank
was
you.
about the community meeting.
Mhm.
So
Yep.
we really want to get to planning that. Maybe we can make that an agenda item to talk to Chuck as well. Because I don't know what their involvement would want to be. But I envision a short deck that we write that sets the stage of where we are with this thing. And then we open it up to questions and respond to those questions, and that's about it. It really doesn't have to be complicated. Just want to get it on the calendar and book a date and book a room and run our deck by Chuck before we show it.
And
That's it.
I had talked to Bill McBride from the HPB and Susan Loda from the ZBA and Planning Board. Both of them would like to present the part of the process that involves those respective boards. I think that's also helpful because it will help people understand that this isn't just a village board issue, it involves all the boards.
Yeah, good idea.
And I'm going to be away incidentally over Christmas from December 19th. I will be back on January 8th.
Okay, so if we're planning to meet with, the attorneys on the 17th, that only gives you and Dan a day to meet with.
Couple days.
Yeah, it's fine.
You leave on the 19th?
What's your schedule
I
now?
leave late in the day on the 19th, so even early in the day on the 19th, I potentially could meet.
So you could get a calendar now, pending whatever Chuck says to you on the 17th.
Yeah,
Well, we've got to talk to Chris too. And find
Yeah,
out when he's-
that's what I meant, get it scheduled with Chris.
Okay? All right. Anything else on that, Dan?
That's all I have. What do you talked about March on that, I think, right?
yeah.
You were talking February, March.
February, March, okay.
Okay, Renee, member items?
I just have the one that I mentioned earlier. There was an incident on the corner of South and State Street, and I know we've talked about getting rid of that right turn lane and many other things, and so let's make sure that we get, as part of that SRF overview that we just approved, let's make sure that they look at that whole corridor. I realize it ties in with State Street, but they're about to redo the bridge.
It's
And
an
we've got,
optimal
yeah,
time.
so,
Right.
you know, talking about reconfiguring that, people use that as a yield, as Steve was mentioning earlier about Shane Place. And they don't even pay attention when there's a red light, so,
Yeah.
there are some options we have for there.
And there's just nothing darker than 5 o'clock in early December.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right. Dan, do you have any
I did not,
items?
I already worked them in.
Okay, all right, thank you. Zach couldn't be here tonight, so let's move on to Steve's report.
Wait, I did have a question. Does anyone know what this thing on Zach, it says, vehicle crash or vehicle accident? What is
Oh,
that?
he was hoping to have a report to me to the board on his minor incident
Okay, that
accident.
involves a DPW
Vehicle
Okay,
accident.
thank you.
Nobody was injured, minor damage,
Okay.
no, but he wanted to let the board know.
All right, everybody have my report? You guys
Yes.
gotten it?
Yep.
And
Okay.
I've read it.
Yeah, so basically, the report's the only thing I want to do, kind of a summary, we're at the year end here. I've been able to close 108 permits since April. Past due and then the other ones that were, processed since. I hit number 100 today, permit issued this year.
And with Mary, I looked at, Steve has generated a significant amount of revenue in the thousands of dollars because of
Well,
the additional.
I actually did a summary, last year total was $5,029 and $10, 47 permits. This year's 100 permits, $27,814 and 19 cents.
Nice pocket of change.
And there was $3.6 million worth of work done this year in the village compared to 1.6 last year.
Wow.
That's a good number to have because, it speaks so well to the health of the village to have, for such a small village, to have that type of
Yeah,
investment.
yes,
That's
yeah.
a big amount of money.
$3,606,000 worth of work's a lot for a village that's 7/8 of a square mile. So, and then we just took in a couple more pretty healthy projects too for this month, which I was surprised. So,
Great.
I was telling Dorothea, number 100, they should have given free, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
But no, it was $509 permit, he's not getting free.
No
I already
gifts,
know.
no gifts, no
Yeah.
gifts.
So that's where we're at. I'm working with the sewer thing, continuing to go through the code. I found some things that I'd like to address, some issues, typos and some other, just references and way I'm gonna have to process things that I don't think flows very well. I will put them in when I get the sheet from Dan and submit them in with the other changes. And I'm slowly going through it. It's not a quick process to get through this.
Really? We didn't have any trouble at all, we were just like that.
Yeah.
What are you
So,
talking about?
but, I just wanna make sure it's palatable for myself and for residents.
So Jeff brought up something that both of you talked about. Will that get added to the doc once we get it put together? Is that on your list, or do we need to talk about it specifically?
I don't think we need to talk about it specifically,
Okay.
we just need a parking spot for it.
Okay.
And I will not be doing the one adding to the Google sheet.
All right, we'll make sure it's in there. We have your email.
And I'm just, a little side note, I'm not convinced that there's not an underlying factor for the problem at 8 Stonegate.
Mhm.
That's why I want to thoroughly investigate it before any fingers are pointed to say that it's our fault or something else, because I want to investigate and find out what else is going on there that could possibly add to what happened here.
I agree, and we want to get a few opinions.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure we're gonna find people on both sides of the
Yeah.
finger point.
Yeah, if we're liable and we're how liable we need to fix something, that's great, but if we aren't, it's due to somebody else doing something down the line. I would like to be able to help determine that.
We have to know because we cannot legally fix a problem that was privately created because that would be a gift under New York State law.
Correct.
Right.
So, that's where I'm at.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thanks.
Just one, Circu and Circu has vacated their building on.
No, now the
Oh.
sign showed up again.
Oh, okay, so are there,
Well, here's the thing, now I have to look and see if it's the same sign that was up there. If it's not a sign, now I have to talk to him
so
about
now he's
a
got
sign without
potentially
permission.
another violation. Okay.
Yeah, which I have to get with you, I've just been busy, because you wanted to be involved with me writing a ticket.
Yep.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
Oh, one question. The house next to Renee, any word on that?
Which is the house next to
That is the vacated house where the couple had a hoarding problem and they were.
Oh, you're talking about on Monroe Avenue?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, I've heard conflicting stories on that. Somebody told me there's structural problems in there.
I don't know, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, there may be structural problems, but that would mean that we would have a licensed architect with preservation background
Right.
look at it, because
Correct.
that would be,
I will look at trying to find out who has possession of it now and what the status of it
I'm concerned, number one, because the grass was left long, they haven't cleaned up the leaves, and it's, the property's beginning to look pretty shabby.
Yeah. All right, and then there's another in Green Hill also, the number one Green Hill, I've been getting complaints on the pods in the driveway. She's supposedly selling it. She's a hoarder too. I mean,
Is this which house is this? This is
the
I feel
first
really
one on
uncomfortable
Green Hill.
the
saying that in
rental or
public
the one on
meeting.
the other
On
side?
the
Yeah,
right
I
side with
see.
the pods, there's two
Okay,
pods in the
okay,
driveway.
Yep, gotcha, okay.
Supposedly she's selling, that's why she had a estate sale in the front yard for 4 weeks.
Okay.
All the
okay.
stuff in the front yard is finally gone, because I kept getting on her saying, you know,
Mhm.
so that's another one.
So that's another one on the watch list.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jeff?
Do you want to amend, we can withdraw things from
I do,
the
I don't
comment.
wanna, they were wonderful neighbors,
They're lovely people.
lovely people.
There's no need to disparage.
Yeah, I just don't want that in the record that they were,
Hoarders.
hoarders. I don't know.
Yeah.
Can we,
It
okay,
doesn't need to be in there.
all right, okay.
It's not.
You strike that?
And I did okay,
Can you
great,
write it down?
Okay.
awesome, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
I
Good-
stopped
good
at
point.
Circuit.
You're absolutely right. I knew
I
Cully's
just
for
found
years.
out that they are alive and well and they're under good care.
Good.
With a friend of mine who runs a retirement community, and it was like we haven't heard from them in a year, so it's very, so the couple is alive and well.
Well,
The
I'm
house
glad-
is a different story,
I'm
so.
glad to hear that, because they were nice, they were
Yeah,
always very
yeah.
nice people, yeah. Okay, Jeff?
So Bob, we're gonna have to correct a little misstatement of yours, because we really don't have a current sharing agreement. It expired in 2018.
This is regarding,
The sharing of equipment back and forth between our two TPWs.
okay.
So I got an email from the town attorney saying, hey, we should probably have the agreement
And update it.
and just make new dates, not really
Okay.
update it. So I would think that we would want to do that, but that's up, it's this.
I would make a motion to renew the labor and equipment sharing
Can I
agreement.
stop you?
Yep.
For the period from January 1st, 2020 through December 31st, 2025.
Amended according to Jeff's suggestion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we've been working on it. Did anybody go to the CCA information session?
I had a conflict and was unable to.
And there's
go.
one right now.
There's one right
Yeah.
now, and
Yeah.
there's two more coming up.
And
Right.
there's
So there's-
also one here
There's
tomorrow
one
night.
here, and then there's one more at the library.
And I will be here tomorrow night because the HPB is having another training session and I will be attending that, but I'm gonna try to pop into the CCA's also.
So, a couple of the hot button items that we've run into as attorneys looking at this thing and feedback from the public meetings are, the phrase that was used recently is mostly renewable energy.
Right.
So this was supposed to be completely renewable energy. I mean, that always catches an attorney's, because what's mostly mean?
Right.
The other thing is, how do people get out of it? It's if it turns out to be a bad deal for the consumer. So we're looking at that, and we have questions for them. So we're still in the process of getting an agreement that the attorneys are comfortable with. We're not there yet.
My concern with that was I found out about that from somebody's Facebook page. I then looked through all my email, and I never got an email talking about those sessions. I didn't learn about that first session until after it had happened, so we didn't get the message out internally that these were even happening.
I've been getting them from Stephanie Townsend's
Yeah,
Facebook
exactly, me
page.
too. Yeah, so,
Well, I mean, I don't know that that's on our hook. It would seem to me if I was the energy supplier, I'd want that word out there.
It was the
Actually, the town
response.
supervisor's been posting it as well, though.
well, yeah, but we were one of the parties on the agreement. So, was it an internal problem with us, or did none of us get notified?
It was-
I'd feel better if it was an internal problem with us,
It
because then
would-
it's just a brain fart, you know?
Right.
I forgot to
It
forward
really
it
was,
around.
in the proposal, it was under, the understanding was that the consultant would publicize it, per what we discussed when we had group meetings.
And I did place it on the
How-
it's on our village.
However, let me just.
Right, after the first one even happened, right?
No, once I got the advertisement from 'em, I did put it up on our, it's on
Okay.
our village, you can, it's still there.
Okay.
The other thing though is, and they emphasize this when there's a legal requirement to have 2 informational meetings at this point, but nothing has been adopted, nothing has been finalized, we haven't signed anything. There will be more important, if all municipalities, if we all go ahead and we agree to do CCA, there will be additional public meetings. Those are the ones that people are really gonna come out for. So these are a legal requirement, but they basically told us they're not that important, they're usually not well attended. Once this becomes real, then we really need to make sure that people know that these things are going on.
Okay, so you got the word of this. Can you let us all know when something
Sure,
like
I
that comes
assume
along?
you guys were already
Yeah.
receiving it.
Yeah.
What is
Usually-
CCA?
Community choice aggregation. It's a way to buy energy from. It's still delivered by RG&E, but you get
Different suppliers.
you get a group discount, and you can opt out of it. And you can also buy all clean energy if you want, which is, or as Jeff said, mostly clean energy. You would still pay your, you wouldn't even notice it happen. You would
51%.
you would still pay your bill through RG&E. They'd still do the maintenance on the lines, that kind of thing. Just you'd save a little money.
And you have
it
a
would all be
choice,
free.
you can maintain your service from RG&E, or you could opt into this
But
program.
this is like a combined thing, so like a neighborhood could all get together and.
It'd be the whole town.
In this
Because
case,
Currently, can't you
Yes.
choose different, okay.
Yep.
you can choose different ESCOs, correct. This would be, the idea is that you get a lower rate, because in this case, the town of Arundecoit, the town of Brighton, the town of Pittsford, and the village would be a group.
Okay, it's just on a more massive scale.
Correct,
So it's just
right.
I want this in your neighbor, okay.
It's a good deal. It's like a win-win. Really is.
Yeah.
And we've read the fine print.
Okay, all right. Anything else on that?
What happened to our clock?
Yeah, I was wondering that.
It was hanging, and I didn't want someone to get knocked on the head.
Oh, during,
Yeah, apparently the
Candlelight?
sticky holding it.
Was
So
loose.
it was with all the people
I
coming
thought you were
in the
trying to
other night.
torture us.
No,
By not putting it
no.
in. Okay.
We
No.
have an executive session item.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, let's get to the end of the
Do you
agenda.
want to do bill pay?
Yeah.
I have lawyers stuff. Do you want to do that first, or do you want to do? How do you want to do this, Dorothy?
I don't think we want to do it. Mary talked to you today,
Yes.
and she told me I really did pay attention to her today. She has more, and we're hoping to approve all this on Tuesday when we have that special meeting.
So you don't want to do bill pay tonight?
We were hoping.
We're
we
doing
could-
bill pay, and I
But,
don't
but the legal bills, Mary is still working on some stuff, and she wanted to
Yeah.
get it all together.
straightened out, and she Tuesday.
Okay. I have approvals. I'll just send them by email.
Yes,
And
that's
then
what
we
she
can vote on them.
that's what she's
Okay.
requesting, that you send all your approvals to her
Okay.
as required. Okay. See the brain did kick in some point.
So why did she circle 341, the Barton Luigi?
She circles things of, she figures might interest you.
Are unusual or out of the ordinary or a
Correct.
large amount.
Correct.
That's none of those things.
Right,
No, that one's
Comparatively.
very nice, so
yeah.
That's not.
Is that just?
I think maybe because it was the
The
last,
final payment,
I
maybe,
think
just
so.
to,
I
okay,
think so,
all right.
yeah.
maybe it was a happy thought.
I
A
hope so.
happy circle.
A happy circle. Let's go with that. I'll be happy.
Where is, I had a question on one of these, see if I can find it.
You know which type of sewer this one is.
Did you get any pushback on the switch of the healthcare plan?
Nope. They're very happy, and matter of fact, on Tuesday, I'm gonna ask you to fund the HSAs for January for the half year. And I'll have that list available. A lot of end of year stuff we're working on.
Okay.
Nope, everybody's excited.
I'll make a motion to approve the bills to be paid as as Mary outlined in her email on.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye? Okay, do you wanna talk about the estimate from general code?
This is the latest estimate with general code. This is including the historic district, and it did save us some money to hold off and wait, which I told you I would. He included all in here. This also is including 12 new code books, totally reprinted, so fresh, no old, worrying about missing sections. So we're still under what we budgeted, so it's about 8,200.
My
Maybe
question,
12?
go ahead.
12 books
Yeah,
seems
that
like
was
a
my
lot,
question.
given that we have it electronically.
Well, when
I
you
don't know.
start counting,
The mayor probably has one, you have one, Justin has one.
Steve has one,
Steve has one, we have
Dorothea,
one in the office.
Dorothea has one.
Okay,
We usually like to have one for reference
Right.
that's available.
APRB.
okay, that makes sense,
It's-
APRB. I was trying to figure out, I agree that it's, you need to have them, a
Right,
couple
and
of
the
them.
attorneys for those boards also
Okay.
need them. See, the more you start counting,
All right,
It adds up.
12 seems like a lot, but, I don't know that that would.
because I
save us
tried to go
much.
10, and then I think we counted and we went, well, you know what, we better get 12.
Yeah.
Why do we need, and when it's all online and searchable, it's so much easier to use online.
I'm faster with a book, much faster.
So there's
I've watched
one.
Mindy flips through that thing like
I
a.
have my
Yes.
code all tabbed, and for me, it's really easy to find, and you probably have yours tabbed
I
too.
know, but I know where everything is.
But having it tabbed, you can get rid of
Mhm,
stuff
right.
immediately. It's a great idea.
My other question on this was, do we wait until the .1 version, or do we do it, because we know we're gonna make changes in the
Yeah,
next 6 months?
Steve's going through it
I'm
as,
fully functional the way I am. I've got it all printed out, double-sided in my book, so I don't need it.
And we have the documents, we
yeah,
can
could
print
we
out the
get by with
documents.
our current one by doing, this isn't like a fancy schmancy copy, it was done on a printer.
I pulled out the zoning code and asked my assistant to double-side the stuff we got from Barton and Liquidice.
The only disadvantage of waiting would be that it won't get online as
Relax.
fast. And the online version is probably the version that's.
Right. Right now, you have to go to the new law section,
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I've had
yeah,
pushback.
I was just
with
trying to
Justin
do
already.
what Dan is saying, can we save some money knowing and like we're
Right.
working on the next code revision? I don't know.
Those,
I don't know how much
and
that
in
saves us.
comparison, those will be minor.
Okay.
It should
it won't be another 6,000.
No,
Okay.
no, 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 no,
No.
no. And to be honest, I only do the supplemental updates every 6 months to a year, depending on how much we have.
But how about this? What if we waited on the 12 printed? Because I don't want to print 12 now and print 12 in 6 months.
How much does that save us?
That
Do we
saves
know?
us
It's only saving-
$1,700.
The only concern I have with that is because the books we have around here are, some are so old and out of date, I'm concerned with that they are current and reflect. I don't even think the building inspector has a complete book. So,
How much did that cost you to do? Your office, do you know? Well, we're gonna get billed for it, so we should know.
No, it's just copies.
and to be honest, I don't want to do it.
Alright.
I'd rather have them do it and make sure it's right. Not just, because if we miss something, if they miss something, that's something we can go back on them, but I
We
don't
just
have
print, we
stamp.
just print out the files that we have the master files. We're gonna spend $1,700 and then we're gonna spend $1,700 again in 6 months.
No, you won't.
No,
No, no,
no,
no. You only
because
pay for the supplemental.
You only get pages that
To
you
change out.
insert into where they're needed, so you only get a few pages.
Yeah, it's not a complete reprint. It's just the page that the change appears on.
Okay.
Your words to God's ears, Bob, that it will only be a few pages.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like
But
it.
we'll have
The
a-
list we got from them.
But with the new books, we'll have a better handle that everything is updated, who has books, and when it's updated. Right now, we don't have that because the books are so old.
One other thing, just, and I should have said this earlier, I apologize. We should also, I think, schedule a meeting with the planning board to have dialogue. I think it's premature if they're having another meeting, I believe, on Monday to go through some more. Dorothea's going to take some well-needed time off. She
Trying.
has extra time that she's trying to use up before the end of the year. I suggest after the first of the year, we might want to, just to keep the dialogue in a constructive phase. So far, it seems to be going pretty well, and I want to keep us on that track.
I think that's a good plan. I think we said during that meeting that we would start a Google Doc, start everybody, Steve and the planning board, and anything, Jeff, not that you will physically put it in there, but we will, anything that we see, we're gonna start adding to that, and then January sounds like a good point to touch base with them.
Yep.
Okay, what else do you have, Dorothy?
Well, I need authorization to
Oh.
sign this and move this forward.
Well, I'll make a motion. Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor? Aye?
Come on, Dan.
Opposed.
No, motion does not carry.
We'll have to
Can I
decide
think
next
so?
time.
Oh, the motion needs to carry. I'll vote yes.
Thank you, Dan. Okay,
And I'm morally against it.
Dan's a digital guy.
I'm with you. I do know, I've talked to so many people who want the hard copy, so I'm giving him.
And let's send them the file and make them print it
I know,
out.
but I just heard from Dorothea that they're, then you gotta worry about things you've missed or your
I
printer
heard.
didn't, so I got it.
It's a struggle.
Voted the
I-
most reluctant yes I've ever voted.
I prefer digital on everything.
I
because you
want the
know
record to
that Dan
reflect
had
this,
his
a
arm
Dan
reluctant-
had a real
Reluctant,
hard,
yes.
a reluctant
twisted
yes.
hard.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
With a down, not with an unsmiley face.
That's right.
Okay.
And the middle finger.
I'm gonna start using emojis in a minute. Great. Okay, the next thing I have is the Citizens Campaign for the Environment. This is normal. I have to bring it to the board for approval.
These are people that go door to door.
Door, we can't stop them with our current
So
code.
moved to approve. Do I have a second?
Wait, what's happening?
This is like Confer or Knifer. They knock on
Oh,
doors.
gotcha,
and raise
okay.
money.
I thought you were saying we were prohibiting them.
No,
I'd
we
I'd
have
like
to.
to.
We have to approve it. Do I
Yes.
have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
An emphatic yes.
Thank you. Thank
He's
you.
more
Well-
happy
That's a
about the
smiley
citizens
emoji.
than the
With
code.
Absolutely.
no digit standard?
No,
That's a smiley emoji with
with a
teeth
high
showing.
five.
That's it.
I'd like to approve the proposed meeting dates for 2020. Do I have a second?
There was one I want to look at real quick.
Which one?
Hold on. April 1.
Why am I not seeing those?
It should be right after the Citizens Campaign and Environment.
Oh, it's because I'm in the treasurer's work. Never mind.
Yeah, no.
Carry on, everybody.
Yeah.
It's in the wrong, because I'm in the wrong document.
Yeah, you had a proposed change?
No, it wasn't going to change. I just needed to check one date. I'm good.
You're okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Aye.
I'll be
Renee?
posting
Sorry.
these by the new year into the webpage, Facebook.
No minutes tonight, Dorothea?
No, I'd love to give you some, but they're all in a various stage of editing.
Okay.
But you will have a whole ton for your next meeting in January, I promise.
Okay, I'll make a motion to enter executive session. What are we discussing?
Potential lawsuit,
Okay.
potential litigation.
Attorney-client session then?
No,
No?
executive session.
Okay. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.